Good morning, LBC Radio. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today, I have on a super awesome guest. But before we get into that, I have some merchandise for sale. If you really would like to support the podcast, I have these stickers, and I have a shirt and hoodie coming out with the logo on the front and the first 50 guests on the back, including Miss Nina Vitry. Nina is a versatile, multi-instrumentalist singer and songwriter with the storytelling of a folk-inspired songwriter, yet the soul and allure of a voice rooted in jazz, weaving influences ranging from Amy Winehouse and Stan Getz to the modern Lake Street dive. She manages to create a sound that is both soulful and refreshingly unique, evident through her appearances on stages ranging from the Philadelphia Folk Festival to the Lancaster Roots Blues. Nina's eclectic sound suits a variety of occasions. She has won international acclaim as a two-time jazz category finalist in the John Lennon International Songwriting Contest and a jazz category finalist in the Unsigned Only competition. In addition to her commitment to her musicianship and creative projects, she feels deeply connected to her role as a music educator and has been teaching private lessons on the violin, viola, piano, guitar, and voice for more than 8 years. In recent years, she has also been widening her horizons as a side musician, performing with friends on the fiddle, mandolin, and keyboard. Nina enjoys continually exploring her relationship to music, whether it's through developing her own musical ideas, sharing her love of music with students, or supporting friends on their musical projects. You can find her on her Facebook page, Nina Devitri Music, on Instagram at Nina.dv, and on Spotify. Nina, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me, Corey.
Yeah. So, what was it as a kid that got you into music? Was it your family is all into music, right?
Yeah, I would say they are all into music. So this is always a hard one to answer because it runs so deep. I would say I just grew up around music. I'm the youngest of four siblings, and my dad, um, he's always played a ton of music. He's been in various bands. Um, he was never formally trained, but he just picks up instruments and plays them. And my mom sings a bit, plays some guitar, um, and all of my siblings started taking music lessons in school. And so, as a tiny little child growing up, I was just surrounded by people playing instruments. And um, we used to have these bonfires where we would have my parents' friends would come over, they'd bring their kids, and we'd all hang out around the fires and they'd play old time music, which is fiddle music from the Appalachian Mountains, and bluegrass and old Americana songs. And, my dad would sit around with his friends and jam, and my friends and I would lay in our sleeping bags and fall asleep listening to this music. And yeah, it's been around ever since I can remember. And my parents were always taking us to, um, old time and bluegrass festivals
Mm.
growing up. So I don't remember ever missing a year of this one in West Virginia called Cliff Top. It's an Appalachian string band music festival. They don't even have like bands headlining there. You just go camp in the woods at the state park and you jam, and there's square
Really?
dancing, and they have contests, and that's what people sit and watch all weekend. There's
Gotcha.
fiddle contest, banjo contest, all that stuff. So um, I would say I was just kind of born into music, um, and couldn't deny it. Was just
Right.
surrounded by it and have always loved it so much.
So, at what point do you think that you decided that you were gonna be a part of it and start making your own music?
So apparently, when I was about 4 years old, started begging my parents to play the violin. And apparently, I said, I want to play violin so I can fiddle around the campfire with my dad. Which I love that I said that, apparently. I don't remember, but that's what they say. So my mom got me started on Suzuki violin when I was 5, which is a method that
Hmm.
um, a lot of really little kids do. It's designed to sort of start you by ear, and then you end up learning how to read music after that. It's just a specific method of learning that
Oh, you're smart.
it is,
Yeah.
within like the classical realm, But my other siblings had started later in school, but I was like raring and ready to go at age 4. So my mom was like, okay, when you're 5, we'll get you started. So that's when I started taking violin lessons.
That's cool. So, how long did you stick with the violin for?
Well, that's kind of a funny story. I remember like as soon as I started, I didn't have a very big attention span, and I I made it to my twinkle recital, and I was like, "Mom, I want to quit." And I knew I didn't want to quit music. I just knew I didn't have like the energy in me at that time to like do the lessons. And so I took a little break from the violin. I started piano when I was 7, a year later. And then I restarted violin in 3rd grade through school
Mm.
with Elizabeth Lavender, who is an amazing music educator in Lancaster. And so she, was the orchestra director for all of my siblings at Farmdale Elementary School. And so she taught me then throughout elementary school in the Hempfield's program.
Oh, in Hempfield.
Hmm.
Okay. So did you also pick up viola at that time as well, or?
So viola, I didn't really play until later, but it's pretty much the same thing to play viola as violin. It's just the strings are
Mm.
a little bit lower, but they're tuned also in fifths. So it just has a C string, and it doesn't have the highest E string that a violin has. Um, so in high school, when I started teaching private lessons, um, I ended up teaching both violin and viola just because the technique is so
So
much the
similar.
same. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really I actually don't even own a viola, but you can pretty much get away teaching on a violin for
Really?
viola. Yeah.
That's that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder because I started learning violin recently, so I wonder if I could.
Oh.
Well, because as a music composer, I wanted to be able to understand each instrument
Mm-hmm.
and their limits, because
Yeah, absolutely.
I know I've written string stuff before, and I've given it to string players, and they're like, "Corey, you're gonna kill us."
It's like way up in the stratosphere or like,
It's a lot of slides, actually, a lot of double
oh,
stop slides, and that I thought were possible because they were fifths apart or fourths
yeah.
apart, but I just didn't understand the fingering technique
Oh my
that they
gosh,
would need
yeah.
to have.
That's like the craziest like Bach stuff you'll ever find. It's like these double
Well,
stops and like,
it was a lot of folk stuff, right? Because
mm,
any fiddle player worth their salt can do a slide and a half. You know what I
totally,
mean?
totally. Yeah, come to Nashville.
Right, exactly. Have you ever seen Robin Chambers at all?
Yes,
Like
she's
her for
incredible.
exactly like, and that's what I was had been exposed to, and I was like, and these classical musicians were like, no, that's not possible. It's like I've seen it. It can't. It can't be done.
That's awesome.
So I just want to learn. And granted, I don't expect to be the best fiddle player or violin player in the world. What's the difference between a fiddle and a violin? Is it just the way you
Well,
play it?
I don't know if this is a okay joke for this radio station, but my dad always says fiddle smells like beer.
Mm,
You're at a festival and you're like, it's it's different than like the classical camps you go to, and you're just like outdoors usually playing the fiddle. It's the same instrument, but it just often gets exposed to the elements more. You're
gotcha.
camping, you keep it in your car,
So it's a
you're
little more rougher.
jamming, and it's really the style, not the instrument itself.
That's what I figured, but I keep hearing it as if it's a different instrument completely.
Yeah.
It's just similar, and that's so. Anyway, okay, I'm glad I know that for sure. That it is just the style, not the instrument, because that used to confuse me all the time. It was like, was it a fiddle or a violin? And they're like, I don't know.
Sometimes there are some differences in the instrument itself that are pretty small. Like if you want to be playing old time and playing a lot of double stops, for example,
Hmm.
strings at the same time, the bridge itself will not be as rounded on the top because if it's flatter, you can like hit
Do
more
it. Oh
strings
yeah.
at the same time with your bow.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of old time fiddles will have like a flatter bridge, for example.
Mm.
But you can get a luthier to like make you a specific bridge for that situation. You don't have to go out and seek out some like expensive fiddle. You can sort of work with what you have.
A luthier?
Yeah, an instrument maker.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are all new terms for me. So, when did you also pick up piano at that age as well?
Yeah, so I started piano at age 7 with Dennis Desort in Landisville. He was an amazing teacher, is an amazing teacher. Um, and actually, what's funny is he was not a strict guy by any means. He was really laid back. I was a busy child. I loved so many things. And so I was always involved in violin and orchestra stuff and sports and hanging out with my friends. And piano was usually like one of the things to go. If I had like lacrosse season and I also had all these orchestras, I'd be like, Mr. Desort, I can't play this spring. Like I have too much stuff on my plate. And he was always like, that's all right. As long as you're, playing some kind of music, that's awesome. I'll see you when I see you. And he was always just really supportive of like the ebb and flow of being a musician.
Mm-hmm.
And I got really into piano when I was probably around like 5th or 6th grade. Started to like learn some Chopin nocturnes and preludes because my grandmother on my dad's side was an amazing classical pianist. And I was like, I really want to surprise her and go to the nursing home and play some Chopin for her. But then by the time I hit middle school, I got busy as ever. And I still played piano throughout that time, but it was like less seriously. Like violin, I was practicing getting ready for auditions. It started to become this pretty competitive thing. And piano was like this relaxing, extra like fun instrument that I played. And I never felt like I was great at the piano, but I always felt really supported by Mr. Desort. And I started writing songs around that time, probably like, I feel like I've told people different things in interviews. Like I remember doing like a little like melodic composition when I was really young. But when I started writing like lyrics to songs, I think I was about in 6th grade. And I loved writing them on the piano. And I would write these kind of like pop songs on the piano. I loved like Sarah Bareilles and
Right.
Regina Spektor. And so I'd try to write stuff like that. And it was sort of like a secret. I didn't really like show anyone at the time. I would show like some of my friends and stuff, but at the time, I didn't think like, I'm going to be a songwriter. It was just something I would sit down and do and have so much fun doing, and it would just kind of come out. So yeah, the piano is kind of an interesting story for me because I sort of diverged from it, and then in this last year came back to it in this really big way where I like just it felt like this like floodgate was open, and I was like, oh my gosh, how could I have ignored this instrument for so long? I think this is actually my favorite instrument. And I started taking jazz piano lessons in January. And I'm going to be like side personing with my friend's band, going on the road in September on the keyboard now. And I'm like, everyone I see in Nashville, like this always comes up in conversation. I'm like, I've just been loving the piano. Like I'm so excited about the piano these days. And yeah, so that's like a big thing for me. And I think part of that is just that like super, super supportive, like low stress environment that I learned the piano under sort of cultivated this like this really long-term love for it. I love the violin too. It's a little bit more of a like charged thing because, I've been on a lot of different roles as a violinist. I've had a lot of stressful times and big auditions and competitions that are like all tied in with that. So
yeah, it's a balance for musicians because you can work yourself to death and then hate an instrument.
Absolutely.
And there's also I love this instrument because I've it's some sort of trauma bonding almost.
Absolutely. I didn't want to use the word trauma when I was talking about the violin just then, but I've used it before with my friends. I feel like violinists and fiddle players especially, like there's like this intensity about that instrument. It's so competitive because there's
It
so
is.
many violinists and fiddle players.
And there's the stereotype of the first chair violinist being the snooty, pompous person.
Exactly. It's like this, it's totally a thing. Not them being a snooty pompous person, but yes, that being like this super competitive vibe. Um, so right now I'm sort of, I like to play fiddle sort of for fun with my friends. I'll play as a side person on people's gigs. It's like funny because that's the instrument that I'm definitely like the most technically capable on.
Mm.
But these days I've had much more fun like playing the mandolin and playing the piano. And it's been cool to reflect too on like what are the roles of those instruments, and maybe it's more about the role of the instrument and why I love it. Piano and mandolin are both like very percussive
Mm.
and can fill in a lot of melodic roles and also chordal roles and really like fill in the gaps in a band.
Yeah, that's something I've been learning a lot. Something I had to put into practice when I played at the jam session at Roots and Blues. Because as a pianist, I've only been playing. You know, there's two roles as a pianist. You can be the main person, or you can be the rhythm section.
Yeah.
And it has been a journey for me trying to figure out because I'm recent to the gigging life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only a year in, and in fact, I think last August was when I started coming out to like open mics and all that jazz. But I had throughout that year I had to figure out, okay, I'm playing with a guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
How am I gonna blend the piano? Okay, I can play bass, I can do that, or I can
Mm-hmm.
play like the licks all the way up here.
Yep.
But when a bass comes in, okay, now I can't. I have to lay off the bass, and I have to somewhat stay out of the middle range because of the guitar, and then I have to
Yep.
play in rhythm with both of them,
Yep.
and I'm like, oh my goodness, and then add in a violinist like Robin, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, where do I belong?
Yeah, it's a really, really cool challenge, I think. And that's something that I've been learning a lot in the last few years, jamming with people and also in my piano lessons with my teacher now. Um, we're kind of going through piece by piece the different ways to play. And he's like, okay, this is how this is like um, this voicing that you can use if you want to sit down at a piano and play the bass for yourself and play the melody, and it has a cool voicing. Here's how you play like a rootless voicing and you sing along with yourself. Here's how you play if there's a bass player in the trio. Here's how
Mm,
you play if, there's a bass and a lead instrument and you just need to be
rhythm.
filling in
Yeah,
the rhythmic comping, right?
yeah.
So
That stuff I need a piano teacher like that. That's what I
he's
need.
he's awesome. Wayne Horvitz. Yeah, he's a West Coast guy. So I take the lessons on Zoom.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
how's that been?
It's been awesome. It works really well. I've actually been teaching a lot on Zoom myself during the pandemic, so I realized like, this works well in most situations. There's times when like if you're trying to teach someone how to like hold the violin, that's really hard to do on
Right,
Zoom.
yeah.
Probably not the best. But for piano, he has this camera that shines down. I can see his keyboard. Um, yeah, so it definitely works.
That's good. I've heard so many mixed opinions on like Zoom teaching. For me, it doesn't work at all
Mm-hmm.
because I've very much have ADHD,
Yeah,
and if I don't take my medicine, forget about it.
it is. It can be extra distracting.
Yeah, it can be more distracting than anything because I'm like,
Definitely.
well, I'm on my computer, so I can actually just do my own research of whatever I want or find
Yeah,
interesting at the point.
totally, totally. There are some drawbacks and some good things. So I think a lot of people are returning to in-person lessons. I'm teaching in-person lessons again, but also have a lot of students that I had started during the pandemic and live in other places, and then
Mm.
we're still continuing lessons.
So what was it like to start teaching lessons in high school?
Good question. I was lucky enough to get this great job. It was basically a contractor through Hempfield, and I would teach summer lessons to all of the elementary school students.
Mm.
So it was a lot of lessons. It was the fourth, fifth, and sixth graders every summer. The teachers are on break for the year, and they set up this program. So Mrs. Lavender and Miss Myers, those were the ones usually who were in charge of it and would contact me and send me all these student names. Then I'd schedule them and go over to Landisville Intermediate Center, and it would usually be 3 to 4 days a week from like 8 to 4. And these little kids would come in for just 20-minute lessons. So it was,
Fast
pretty
pace.
intense,
Yeah.
fast paced. Like I felt like it was like a doctor's office or something. It's just like bam, bam, bam. But it was really cool. That helped me develop my teaching skills so much. I remember the
Sure.
first time I did that. It was the summer after 11th grade, and I didn't really realize the importance of like developing a relationship with like the parents as well. So I just like sit in the room and wait for the kid to come in and teach them, and then they'd leave. And then I got some feedback, and a parent was like, "Where's the teacher? Like, I want to know what's going on." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, of course." So then obviously with all the feedback every year, I felt like I got to improve a lot as a teacher and interfacing with the parents and learning how to really like try to meet each kid where they were at. Some of them were just really doing it for fun. Some of them were really, really serious, and everybody had different needs. So that was a really, really amazing privilege to have that job, because I got to have usually at least 50 students a summer. There were some students I had like 60 or 70 kids, and I just spread them out over the course of the week, and they're all so cute and so sweet, and that helped me realize like I do love working with kids. So yeah, that was awesome.
You mentioned the aspect of knowing the parents as well. That's something I didn't. Well, I've always kind of realized that, but I didn't realize how much of that is important to like the parents. I teach children how to swim, and their parents are always always watching. Because at that point they're sitting at the edge of the pool while they're watching their kid either panic or do really well. You know what I mean? So and it's always it's funny because I like to push kids because that's my philosophy of teaching. It's like if they mess up, they learn more, and so I'll like when they're trying to float on their back, I won't completely let go, but I'll just like have my hands like right underneath them, and if they go under, I'll let them go under for like a little bit, then pull them right back up, and then I'll tell them what went wrong. But the parents, some parents are like helicoptery.
Yep.
It's like, what happened? And I'm like, listen, it's okay. Can't you see he's
Yeah.
fine?
Totally. Yeah, I feel like I'm still honing my teaching method. I have had both extremely strict teachers who scare me and really chill teachers who give me space to explore what I want to do, but then maybe I'm like, I didn't get as good as I could have, But
It's a balance.
It is a balance. It really is.
Because you don't want to be the strict teacher that kicks you out of music entirely,
Yep.
or kicks you out of swimming entirely, for that
Yeah.
matter. And so I'm always making sure I'm always adjusting my teaching method, because if I know if it works in the case where it's like slow increments, then I'll work that way. But if I know if they make one mistake once and then they figure it out and they don't do it again, then I'll do it that way.
Yeah.
Even if it's a little scary for them, I know it works for them.
Totally.
And
it's so different
yeah.
for every kid. I think the core of my philosophy is just trying to figure out what inspires each kid, because for some kids that might mean a more rigorous check-in and more homework and more accountability, and for some that might mean like having them work on compositions and giving them some space, and
Yeah, that was the biggest problem of my high school years, is that I hated homework. I wouldn't do the homework, but I'd still ace every exam because I would know I would do it on my own. I just didn't have time to do homework. And that's what I really appreciate about college, is that they kind of give you, at least for composition majors, they say, all right, make your own music. And I'm like, oh, I can do whatever I want for my homework?
Yep.
I'll do That's awesome. So I really excelled through that way. But I know other composition majors is like, no, I need like a framework at least.
Right. Yeah, everyone's really different in that way.
Yeah, and it's a exercise, definitely a mental exercise, a good one to for teachers especially because every kid is different, every person is different. Having to adjust yourself in the moment and knowing, learning what to do.
Absolutely. It's just a one big social exercise.
So, what did you decide to do for college, if at all?
So, it's a funny question. Yeah. I I went to Temple University, and my first year I felt very confused and very lost, and I had no clue why I was there. And I was undeclared liberal arts. I took like a psychology class and a Spanish class and um, what else did I take? A journalism class. I was like, maybe I really like writing. Maybe I'll do journalism. Um, and then in my one Spanish class, someone came in that fall and kind of advertised this program they have in the spring that's in a Latin American Studies immersion semester where you're in part of this cohort of like 20 or 30 students. You all take the same classes together all semester, and it's all in Spanish, kind of sink or
Mm.
swim. But they're very like lenient with the grading because some of the people hadn't taken a lot of Spanish, but it was pretty much like, you know, take this if you want to get really, really fluent in Spanish, and then you go to Costa Rica for 3 weeks. And when they came in, I was like, oh, I have to do that. I don't even know what else I would sign up for in the spring. Like I'm definitely going to do that. So I signed up for that and really absolutely loved it. And then kind of near the end of that semester, I was like, I can't stay in school. I didn't really know exactly why or what was wrong, but um, you know, there wasn't anything wrong. I just didn't want to be in school at the time. And realized I loved languages so much. And so I thought, you know what? I've always really wanted to learn French. That's my heritage. My grandfather's from France, but I didn't grow up speaking it. So I made plans, and I didn't go back to school. And in the fall, I went to Canada and like worked in some hostels and just like studied French all the time, tried to talk to people. Obviously, it's Quebecois, it's different, but there were also a
Right.
lot of like French people staying there at the time. Um, and also, while I was there, it was just the first time I ever had free time that I wasn't in a school system and there weren't homework assignments due, as you say, and
Mm-hmm.
like things that I had to do. And I was basically in charge of my time. I had to like help at the hostel, but then you help for a few hours every day. You get your room and board, and then you have free time. And I was like, whoa, I just want to be like studying French and writing songs. And so I wrote a lot of songs that fall. Also had some recent inspiration from a music camp I had gone to that June before. It was like I had my freshman year of college and then immediately went to this music camp called Miles of Music, which is a songwriting camp in on Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire.
Okay.
And my sister had been teaching there, and she's like, "You would love it." So I went there, and that's kind of when I was like, "Oh my gosh, I hadn't shown my songs to people for so long. I didn't play a lot of music my first year in college." Um, and I felt sort of like reinvigorated and really excited about music after that camp again. So that was sort of what I think pushed me to be um, pushing my limits as a writer again and trying to write new songs. And then while I was on that um, gap time in Canada, I wrote a lot and it was cool. I met a lot of people who I'd play for, and obviously they didn't know me, they didn't know my history,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, "We love this. Like, we'd love to listen to this. You should record it." And it always means a lot when someone who doesn't know you at all says that. I think I grew up just like so attached to like being a part of my family where, people know that my siblings play, people know my older sister was in a band, and that can be sort of taxing, like those comparisons and
Yeah,
expectations.
trying to follow in the
And
footsteps.
and so it was pretty cool to like travel alone for the first time, meet people and have them just like see me and my songs for just what they are without any context. Um, and I was like, wow, I really want to do that. I should record these. So then I went home in the spring. I took a few classes at Millersville to see if I maybe wanted to transfer somewhere. Took a philosophy class, a French class, and something else. I forget. And worked a job doing like elderly home care and did a yoga teacher training and ran a Kickstarter to make my EP. So that was sort of like the beginning of my career being like, okay, I want to show my music to people. I'm going to record this. I want to produce this. I want to put this out there. I want to start playing my songs for people.
That's awesome. It's very varied.
Very varied.
Very varied.
I feel like that's a story of my life. I just love so many things. I can't just put my energy in one place, you know? I've been constantly interested in everything. I would come home from school and be like, Mom, Dad, I want to try out for the fall play. And then in the winter, I'd be like, I want to try basketball this winter. And like, I would just be trying it all because I don't know. I love learning. I love new things. I've always been really curious. And by the way, I did actually go back to Temple after that gap year. I realized, I want to have a degree. I want to have that experience. And I really liked the Spanish department. And so I went back and finished my degree, studied abroad, and got a Spanish literature degree.
That's awesome.
And did like a French certificate. And that was one of my favorite things, was actually getting to like immerse myself in French classes. So I feel like I met, a lot of my language goals in college. And I'm glad that I did that then because, especially that I did a lot of traveling because, I graduated in 2019 and I know some friends who graduated then and were like, okay, now I'm going to go travel. And then they had to come home during the pandemic. And, obviously now you're able to travel again and stuff. But at the time I was like, wow, I feel like I traveled enough to last me a while. I feel really glad that I followed that instinct. And also, how your brain changes and it's easier to learn a language when you're younger. And I'm glad I put that work in when I did so that I have that. And, I also think languages are really related to music and creativity.
So how much of the languages have you retained since then?
I think quite a bit. I actually, I had a chance to go on this trip with my boyfriend's family in May, and I was lucky enough to get to go to France, and it was the first. I had been to France once before when I was younger to visit some of my dad's family, and I was in 6th grade, but this is the first time I was there after I had worked on French, and I was able to communicate with people and, form sentences and have conversations. And, my French is not great, but I almost feel like I can tell it's like in my blood, that I'm like meant to be speaking it. As much as I've studied Spanish, I think I'm like semi-fluent, to the point where I'm obviously not a native speaker. I don't like currently keep up with it that well, so I forget vocab and stuff, but I can definitely communicate really well. And that's what they emphasized in that program that I took, was like, it doesn't matter if your grammar is perfect. It doesn't matter if you mess up. Communication is the goal. Communication and connection. And like, I think my interest in, just communicating in general and learning about other cultures is what like got me so excited about that program specifically. So I took what they taught me and applied it to French. And I think I really do feel like I have those 2 languages like under my belt pretty well, to the point where I could, have a conversation with someone. I'd maybe need to get out a dictionary for French, especially. But
that's funny. I've always heard the French are very particular about their language.
They are, as soon as I'm like, well, actually, my grandfather's from France, there's like this whole I feel like the wall
kind of
goes
breaks.
away, and
Yeah.
they're like, okay,
Okay, fine.
you're one of us. Like,
That's good. Because I've heard that the French can be very stingy or very particular. I guess particular is the best word to
yeah,
use.
yeah. They have a lot of patriotism,
Yeah.
They're very specific about wanting to like retain their culture and keep it very French. And, obviously there's a lot to be there are a lot of perspectives on how good or bad
Right,
that
of
is.
course,
But
right. But it's something I've noticed. So, what was it like for your collegiate career? Why did you do Spanish literature, but now you do music?
yeah.
Why? How? Maybe a better question.
How is a good question. So I think, how they say, like, if you go for a liberal arts degree, you can do anything. I don't know if you've heard
I've
that.
never heard that, but
Okay,
I have
well,
now.
my teachers in high school would always say, like, don't worry so much about what you go to college for, because especially if you go to liberal arts, or maybe this is just what they told us in the liberal arts school. I think it might have been like the liberal arts college message to try to like brand themselves and be like, we're worth it.
Right.
But basically it's like you learn all of these what's the word? The like um transferable skills, right? That are like
Yes.
life skills and communication skills and writing skills and skills to interface with people, skills to like if you were to run a business, like all these projects that sort of like get you ready for that type of thing. Um, so obviously my like speaking French and Spanish doesn't relate hugely to being a musician, but I think the truth of it is just like that's just what I was so interested in at the time. I think perhaps I was a bit burnt out from all of my classical music stuff, and
Mm.
I didn't understand. Like, I remember telling my friends, I was like, I think I want to like go to college for like while I was in school, while I was at Temple. I was like, maybe I want to transfer into Boyer and do jazz violin. Like, I knew I loved jazz, I knew I loved music, but there was something that didn't feel right at the time. I was like, I didn't feel like prepared for that leap, or it like wasn't the right thing. I was like, no, like violin, like I don't want to go to college for violin. Like there's something about that instrument, like I don't want to be doing it right now. And I also felt like, after that gap year, I released my EP and I started gigging and doing shows, and I realized I was like, I love doing this and I don't actually necessarily need to go to school to do
Mm.
this. And I was like kind of looking back at my life and being like, wow, like everything I've done, all the music I've dedicated myself to is under my belt now. And I feel like my music reading skills, my ability to like um, learn music by ear and write charts for songs, like all those skills I have from just being so committed to my music growing up. Um, Senior year of high school, I even like in the semester I was going to take a physics class, and then I was like, you know what? I don't need that to graduate. I already took like AP bio or whatever. So I I was like, what do I really want to take? And I was like, oh, I'm going to take AP music theory and a drawing class like every other day. And I remember being like, is AP music theory or physics going to be more useful to me in my life? And at the
Mm.
time, I was kind of new. I was like, music theory. I just feel like, even though I knew I wasn't going to school for music, I knew I wanted to dive more into that. So I had a great time taking that class. It came very easily to me. It's the only AP test I got a 5 on.
Oh wow.
I got plenty of 4s on the other ones, but like it's funny when I look back at the AP scores and I'm like, it kind of shows me like what I'm meant to be doing almost in a
Right.
way. Worked really hard on like these other classes, maybe got a 3 or a 4. Didn't work as hard in this music class, and then, it just comes comes more easily because but it's like, I had put all the work in from age 5 to
Right, to
learning
do
music
that.
and being around it. So all that being said, I feel like I sort of have an accumulation of a lot of education in music that sets me up for a career in music, even though I didn't go to school for it, if that makes
Mm.
sense. And I was, I had a good scholarship at Temple, so I'm lucky to not feel like I like paid a lot of money for this degree that I don't use or something. Like it felt like a really, like a good, a privilege to be able to go study something I was interested in and then be like, all right, I can be, a versatile language speaker in whatever setting I am in for the rest of my life. And now what I want to do. I did try to do this like AmeriCorps job at an immigration center where I would be using my Spanish. And it just felt, it was really the best way I can say it was very out of alignment. And I had moved to Boston after graduating from Temple because all of my friends went to music school in Boston. And I was like, had been visiting all the time during my senior year. So I pretty much went up there to be around my friends, to be around the like Berkeley and NEC music scenes. But I was like, I'll get this job to like, so I can go move there. And it was, it was just not the right thing for me. And so I quit and I started freelancing. And that was the moment where I was like, what can what do I have to offer to this world? Like what skills do I have? And I was like, well, I've done a lot of music teaching. That's something I can do to like at least pay the bills and be on my feet, and I like it. So I got a lot of students there and then started gigging. Then the pandemic hit, of course. I had to sort of turn to Zoom teaching and all that and not gig for a while, but yeah, and it was cool to be in Boston and be in that community of friends who all are pursuing something similar. And it was kind of like I went there to like pretend that I was in music school. I was like, I missed the boat, but I can at least go hang out and go to these jams and like hang around all my friends who study music. And I'd see their assignments, the kind you're talking about, your composition assignments, and
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh my gosh, I would love to do that.
Right.
I'm like, oh, like I do love academic stuff and I enjoyed like writing papers and stuff in college, but I'm like, what the heck? Like I should have been like doing this stuff, scribbling on staff paper and making songs. Like what was I doing? Um, but I don't regret my path because it brought me to where I am now. And
Yeah.
I still sometimes think about going to get a master's in something music related just because I do love the act of studying and I'm really enjoying like studying the piano again. And there are like the tech related parts of music that like
Mhm.
the engineering and production side of things where I love producing. I love producing my own music and I'm like, I think I could do this for other people, but I want to have some more tech skills so that I'm really,
So
really
you know you
able.
can do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you're now based in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
What made the move there?
So my boyfriend and I were living together in Boston. Pandemic hits. We stay in Boston for a while and we're like, this is an expensive place to live if
It
there's
is.
no reason to be here because at that point he had just graduated. All our friends, like the whole quote unquote scene sort of dissolved for at least a moment when the pandemic hit. People went home.
Yeah.
There weren't jams, there weren't shows, there weren't in person classes. And so I knew at the time when I had moved to Boston, I was like, all my friends here are sort of like on the cusp of graduating. I know I might not be here long, but I want to seize the moment and go to this place that is so inspiring to me. So I went there kind of knowing I wasn't going to be there long. I if the pandemic hadn't hit, I would have stayed longer. I was getting prepared to re-sign my lease in Jamaica Plain. I like absolutely love that part of Boston. It's so sweet. Loved my roommates, had the greatest living situation. Ended up moving with my boyfriend when the pandemic hit. And then, we were like, okay, this isn't going to be the most like fruitful place for us to be like quarantining.
Right.
Um,
Especially at toll roads everywhere.
yeah.
That was my most expensive part of Boston, was the toll roads.
Oh my God, you lived in Boston?
We vacationed. No, well, it's the funniest story actually. So, for an April Fool's prank, I switched my birthday to April 1st just to see how many people I would trick. And I happened to trick some of my very best friends. And they're like, "What are we gonna do for your birthday?" And so I kind of just like rolled with it.
Like on Facebook, you just turned it to April 1st.
Yeah. And so I kind of just rolled with it. And so we planned on this Boston trip for my birthday.
Oh my gosh.
And so
And when did they figure it out?
when we got there, because I didn't want to tell them, because I was like, well, we planned it, and then we're gonna have like a bunch of fun, and I was like, and so on April 1st, I was like, by the way, April Fools, and they're like, no, you didn't.
So
And
were they mad?
They were kind of
Ah.
they were mad. They were a little bit mad, but I think it wore off. I don't know, but we had a great time. We got on each other's nerves a little bit by the end of it, but that's
That's
what friends do that.
that's a hilarious story.
But yeah, the
Wow.
toll roads were the most expensive part of going to
Yeah, the
Boston.
tolls are expensive. I think a lot of people were realizing, if they had the ability to not be in a city, it was like it
Yeah.
was nice to go somewhere where you had space to like hang out outside and have a yard.
Hmm.
Rent was much more affordable in Nashville. My oldest sister lives there, Maya, and my boyfriend Sam, his older brother, who's a mandolin player, lives there with his wife. They're both musicians. And so we had some family, and also it's just one of those places that after people go to school in Boston, they usually move to like New York or Nashville or maybe LA. Those are like the big cities people will go to. So a lot of our friends sort of started that like mass exodus
Hmm.
down to uh, Nashville. So it feels like a really good time to be there. A lot of our friends who were in Boston have ended up now in Nashville over the last year or so. Um, there's, the weather is nice. There's space for
Yeah.
outdoor stuff. Obviously, that's less of an issue now, but it's still nice to be somewhere where you can be outdoors if someone has COVID and you can't go inside or whatever. Um, yeah. So that's pretty much why. Just like the reality of rent prices and
Like adult problems.
adult problems. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are real problems that adults have to face with, and
Yep.
that was the one thing that surprised me when I went to Nashville for a road trip. It's just how affordable everything was. Like even
Right?
gas.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was like 285 when I went down there.
Yeah. I mean, comparing that to Boston, New York, or LA, it's like it's an
It's
easy
it's
choice.
easy choice, right?
Yep.
Especially if you're not big,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So what was it like to? Here's a question: at what point did you do the John Lennon International Writing? I
Oh,
guess.
good question. When I did my EP, I got really excited about like I could like submit this to contests. These are like good recordings. So I think it was that year, or maybe in several of the years after that, I'd write songs and submit them to that. Um, so that was maybe a year or so after I released my EP. It was kind of trying to learn ways to put stuff out there and like have more visibility.
Mm-hmm.
Contests are they're they're a little silly sometimes, but they can give you extra visibility if you're able to win.
Do well,
Sometimes
yeah.
you get great prizes. Like one of my friends won this contest and got to have a whole album recorded for free. Um, that's the kind of stuff that you can win. And like the John Lennon like finalist prize is like $20,000. That's for like the winner, and they
Mm-hmm.
have like three finalists in each category. I'll probably submit to that again because I feel like I got close a few times, and I'm proud of that. But yeah,
That's good. It's something I didn't realize how extensive like there's so many competitions.
there's so many.
There's so many. I didn't realize how many there were until like just recently, where you can like literally submit your song to so many different places
Yep.
and gain notoriety through that
Mm-hmm.
and gain not that it's easy, but you can do some great stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of that's worth it to just put yourself out there and see what happens. I have some friends who did not close friends, but people I knew in Boston who did American Idol last spring, and even if they didn't make it to the end or win or whatever, maybe they made
On
it to like
TV.
top 20 or top 12, and you gain like a lot of followers
Yeah.
and stuff. People start to know who you are. So
We had a local from Salisbury go on to America's Got Talent, and just the entire city was like, yeah.
yeah, it's really exciting when you know someone who goes on that
Yeah.
thing.
So we have some of your songs. We're kind of running out our radio time. Would you like to introduce some of your songs?
Yeah, sure.
The first one we have is "Baby in the Shade." Tell me about this one.
Okay, so this one this one is one of the oldest songs that I've written that I like still show people. I was like 15 when I wrote this melody and the first verse. And then I didn't finish it, and a couple years later I really liked this boy. I was very interested in this boy, and we like had a nice time together one time, and then I was asking his friends like, why hasn't he been like responding to me? I'm like so confused. Like, why doesn't he like me? And they were like, actually, he's going through a super hard time. He is like very depressed and having a lot of like mental health stuff going on. So he doesn't know it, but I wrote this song for him. I finished it out as a sort of like, as if he were to hear it, or someone going through something like that were to hear it, it would maybe make them feel like a little bit better, hopefully.
That's awesome. Well, this is "Baby in the Shade" by Nina de Vitry.
She's always here to cover the disarray. It's gonna be okay, 'cause it's always okay. And time's gonna pave the way, 'cause she's always here to cover the disarray. 'cause I wanna see you smile.
And that was Baby in the Shade by Nina de Vitry. Tell me about the arrangement and composition process of that.
Okay, this one I can't really take credit for because that songwriting camp that I went to, they have this really awesome class called Band in a Box where you basically bring a song you wrote, you bring a chart, and you bring it to the band, and they just like play it live with you. And so I brought this song, and that was the first time I ever heard my song with a band. It's not this recording, but
Right.
that was the first time I ever heard my songs with a band, and my mind was blown. You know, the guy who played saxophone on this track was the guy who was there playing in the band at the camp, and I had never imagined my music with like horns and a full band and drums and stuff. And so I really based this arrangement and production off of what I learned there. You know, I got a recording of that from the camp and just was like, this is amazing. The horn players there did the little like, and I was like, that's an amazing hook. You know, gave them horn arranging credit on the EP and stuff because I like definitely took a lot of inspiration from that experience for this song.
That's awesome. We have one more, Broken Cities. Talk about that one.
Yeah, so this one is, I wrote this, I think, that same camp. I was sitting on the docks at this lake and just wrote it on guitar. And it was right after I had decided to take a gap year and leave Philly. So this song is sort of all about the darkness that I was feeling surrounding being sort of trapped, feeling trapped in the city and where I was. So yeah, I think that's all I'll say about that one.
This is Broken Cities by Nina de Vitry.
Fast when lights are more than day. Try to last a couple nights, a fickle game to play. When I just wanna fly away. When I just wanna find my way. Broken cities take my eyes with right fluorescent pleas. But dimmer vision satisfies the ones who cannot see. They just want to fly away. They just want to find their way. They just want to fly away. They just want to find their way. Thanks to this broken place, reminded me it's time to turn from the blinding lights into the sight I've come to learn. Thanks to this broken place, reminding me it's time to turn from the blinding lights into the sight I've come to learn. Come to mock that you just wanna fly away. And you just wanna find your way. disinfect and cauterize our minds. Clear them out and close them up in hopes that we don't find. We just wanna fly away. We just wanna find our way. We just wanna fly away. We just wanna find our way. Thanks to this broken place, remind me it's time to turn from the blinding lights into the sight I've come to learn. Thanks to this broken place, remind me it's time to turn from the blinding lights into the sight I've come to learn.
What a trumpet song.
Oh my gosh, I know. Michael Burton,
Michael
the
Burton.
trumpet player, yeah.
Tell me about the composition process for that was, by the way, that was Broken Cities.
Yes.
Tell me
yeah.
about that composition process.
So that one, I came up with the horn part that I wanted, and I had a friend, Andy Mowat, who's a Lancaster guy, help me write out the horn arrangement because I didn't have like finale or anything like that. So we got together. He put some stuff down, and then I was like, all right, I want it to do like this hook and whatever. So he helped me with the horn arrangements, and that one just sort of came to be in a way. Like I knew I wanted drums and bass. All the songs on the EP we tracked first with guitar, drums, and bass. And then I overdubbed the vocals, and then I added, someone playing like keys, people playing horns, like that stuff afterwards. So yeah, that was the process on that one.
Real quick, for those who don't know, including me, what does overdub mean?
Oh yeah, an overdub is just like extra tracking that you would do after the fact. So like a vocal overdub, you have the main track, and then you go in to do a dub or an overdub, and the engineer will put the track on, and you'll sing over what's already there. So it's just not live.
Gotcha.
So
Gotcha,
a
that
lot
makes
of
more sense.
recording happens that way.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
pretty rare these days that you get like a totally, there's live albums, but that doesn't happen as much. I'd love to do something like that at some point, but I also love all the technology at our disposal that you can
Yeah.
like really work to get something to sound the way you want it to.
Yeah, okay. I've been overdubbing stuff without knowing what I'm doing.
For years.
So, we're running out of radio time. Where can people find you? Gigs and such.
So I just had some gigs this past weekend that were super fun. And this Friday, I'm going to be at Phantom Power in Millersville. I'm playing a gig with my dad, and I'm so excited. He's an amazing musician, and I love playing music with him. We haven't gotten to play a gig together for a long time, so this is going to be quite different than when I play with my band. I probably won't really be doing as much of my like original stuff. He's just like, he is the American Songbook. Like he knows all the best songs, and so I've just kind of been like, yeah, like let me know what you want to play, and it'll be more of the vibe of what I grew up with. What we just heard is sort of my like adult creations, and when I was little, We sat around the fire and played and everything like that. So that's what it'll be like on Friday. I'll be playing some mandolin and fiddle and singing harmonies with him and stuff.
Awesome. And that'll
Yeah.
be 6 to 8, right?
Yeah, 6
Yeah.
to 8, I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
So if you want to check her out there, be sure to do that if you want to see her music. Because for whatever reason, Facebook doesn't. If it's copyrighted material, it'll match. I assume it's copyrighted,
Yep.
right? It'll match copyright, and it'll mute the section of the part. However,
Oh.
Spotify and all the other podcasting platforms won't do that because you're right here. You gave me the music. You
Right.
gave me permission to use
Right.
it, right? But Facebook doesn't. Like, it'll do that with my own music.
Wow.
Yeah, it'll mute my own music,
Oh my gosh.
even though I literally created it. So if you want to hear what her songs sound like, please go over to her Spotify.
Yeah.
She has all those EPs out on her Spotify, which is Nina de Vitry.
Yep, just my name and or Apple Music or wherever you stream, and
Yeah.
if you want to buy it, you can go on Bandcamp and buy a copy, and yeah.
Yeah, and is that still Nina de Vitry, or is that Nina de Vitry music on Bandcamp?
It's just Nina de Vitry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to check out her Facebook, it's Nina de Vitry music.
Yep, so you can tell me apart from my personal profile.
And if you want to check out all of her updates and all that jazz, check out her Facebook and her Instagram at nina.dv. And with all that said, you can follow us on the Story Podcast. Corey Rosen, search that up anywhere you are on Facebook, Spotify, Instagram, _story_podcast. You can find out all of our future upcoming guests on there, including tomorrow we're going to have a local studio group called the Kaleidoscope.
Cool.
You ever heard of them?
No.
They're pretty cool people. They produce music for local bands around here, so I'm really excited to talk to both of them. That'll be the first time I've had two people on the show at once.
That's
so,
awesome.
So that'll be an interesting episode for sure. If you really want to support us, please do be sure to like, subscribe, share, and if you are feeling extra generous, be sure to check out our merchandise. We have stickers on sale, and we have shirts and hoodies with the first 50 guests on the back, including Nina. With all that said, we're going to get you guys back to the radio. And if you want to follow us, we'll continue our conversation live on Facebook.com/The Story Corey Rosen. All right. So, during our call a few days ago, which was yesterday, was it?
Saturday,
Saturday, something like that. It is Tuesday. That's right. Oh my gosh.
Yep.
Dude, these past few days have just melded together.
I know it.
But we talked about living in Nashville versus having like the money aspect of it. Tell me about that.
So, I had an interesting conversation with my sister recently where she said she sat down with her boyfriend and they were both looking at like, how much money do we actually make in Nashville versus on the road? And I think for a lot of Nashville musicians, they actually make most of their music in other places or make most of their money from music in other places. It's a place where a lot of like touring musicians live, right? And so if you're not at the point in your career yet where you are able to sustainably be touring, you'd think you might just be like playing shows in town all the time to pay the bills. I know for me and most of my friends that I know, we kind of piece it together in a lot of different ways, basically for the purpose of being a musician and being able to sustain being a musician. You have to like be creative with how you're making your money. So like I teach music lessons, which I love to do. I also like recently have gotten more like transcribing work where I'm like transcribing someone's songs on paper for them, or recording someone's music for them, that kind of work. And I've also recently started doing some more like side person work where I'm going to go on the road with my friends playing piano in September. Plug Dallas Ugly, great band, look them up.
I was supposed to have them on. I was,
Really?
yeah, because I,
Oh my
well, yeah,
God. They're my best friends. They're
yeah,
so good.
they talked about you actually,
Really?
because I went to their show on
Oh,
Zootropolis,
okay.
and they were supposed to, we had it scheduled that they were supposed to come on that Saturday, but
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately they had to find a place to stay the night, which
Yep.
they had to go in Philly. So I'm planning to have reach out to them in Nashville when I go
Awesome.
this December.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah,
Maybe
you
have them on
definitely
that.
should. They're the coolest.
Oh yeah, quick plug for Dallas Ugly. Please
Yeah,
do check out their music. It's really
they're
awesome.
amazing.
They're
So
amazing.
I'm really excited. They haven't announced this yet. I don't know if this is a secret, but I'm gonna be playing keyboard for them in September, and I'm very excited. That's sort of like my first time going on the road as a side person,
Mm.
and I'll also be doing an opening set for them at those shows.
That'd be really
And
convenient.
yeah, honestly, that's kind of the dream. Like, that's kind of the goal for me right now. Like, going back to the money thing, Corey and I had a conversation this past weekend to sort of get ready for this. And I was telling him that as a band leader, it's just really expensive. Because, there are bands where it's a mutual band. Like, for example, Dallas
That was
Ugly,
ugly, yeah.
those three created that band together. They all write songs and create and arrange the music together. So they're not
Yeah.
paying each other. They all play a show and they all make money from that show. But when you're a front person leading a project, you know, you're hiring people to play with you.
Mm-hmm.
And some people's whole job in Nashville is being side musicians. So it's really not, it's not cool to like have people play and not pay
Not pay
them
them,
like
yeah,
that.
it's not
Doesn't
cool.
really happen. And there are people who are really good friends and they'll sort of be like,
Favors,
oh, I'll
right.
play on your music if you play on mine, or I'll play on this session for you if you make me some merch or like whatever. But as you can imagine, that's not
It's not sustainable.
entirely sustainable. So that's, part of the reason I'm sort of taking like, just like, I think very slow, like intentional steps with my solo career, because at this point I don't have the resources to be like taking a full band on the road, or something like that. So for me, I've realized pretty recently my goal is I really love supporting other people's sounds and music, especially on keyboard, also on fiddle and mandolin and harmony vocals. So I see myself as getting more, they call it like a utility person if you can play a lot of side instruments
Yeah.
and be in someone's band, right? So sort of the goal for me is like, I want to I want to be in different bands and going on the road, getting that experience, hopefully doing opening sets, because it's kind of like you're getting all this exposure and you're also getting paid to do it.
Right.
So for me, I think that makes a lot of sense. Other people I know are that are sort of in my phase of their careers. I have a lot of friends that are my age, in their 20s, sort of getting off their feet, making records, sort of like trying to shop around to labels, but it's like this huge, overwhelming experience, and you're not sure if you want to sell your soul and all that stuff.
Exactly. Scams and all that.
And
Yeah.
and so there's also like, okay, trying to get an opening slot with a bigger artist, sort of the same thing. Maybe you're not also side personing, but you're getting to go along and play your songs for 45 minutes a night all over. So those are some ways that I feel like in the beginning of your career, especially if you're a solo artist, that you can still get out there and still be touring in a sustainable way. So that's sort of where I'm putting my focus right now. I love coming home to play shows because Lancaster is such an incredibly supportive community for the arts, and the venues really treat the musicians well. They give guarantees, so I can actually afford to come home, pay my band really well, and still make money, right?
And then go back home.
And then go back home. Shout out to Allegiant Airlines, very cheap flights from Harrisburg to Nashville. But that's not the case. I don't know of any places in Nashville right now that I can get paid enough to hire my full band to play with me. So I do have 2 shows coming up in Nashville in case anyone's randomly going to be there. in
I do have a
August.
following in Nashville, actually.
All
I
right,
do.
all right. So August 12th, I will be at Rudy's Jazz Club, and that's my first full band show in Nashville. I've had to sort of, play my cards a little carefully and be like,
Right.
okay, am I in a position to have money saved up to pay my band well to do this? So I'm gonna play Rudy's that night, and then Saturday the 13th at Dee's Lounge, and super excited for that. Um, and another aspect of me playing with a band is I'm sort of in this transition period where I love my Pennsylvania people. I've been
Mm.
playing with Micah Graves from Philly on the piano for years now. We met at Temple.
Amazing pianist, by the way.
Amazing
Amazing
pianist. Look him
pianist.
up. He put out like 3 albums last year. He's very
What?
prolific. He's amazing, and a really amazing, sweet person. And we became friends when, as I was studying Spanish, I decided to ask the community jazz band at Temple if they needed a singer. And they were like, we've never had one, but sure. So that was one way that I got involved in music while I was there. But I was really lucky to meet Micah there. He's been coming to Lancaster now for 4 years now to play shows with me. And then I met Jackson Trout through my friend Tuck Ryan, who's local. Jackson went to Lancaster Mennonite, and
Mm.
now he goes to school in New York City, but he'll come back for gigs. And I sort of have this like loyal band that I love so much, and we play so well together. But Micah is about to go to grad school in the Netherlands.
Oh, wow. Yes.
It's like his dream. He went there, studied abroad for a semester, and loved it so much. And he's, he is just like bound for amazing things, and I'm so excited for him. But I've known for a while, like, okay, gotta get a band together in Nashville, but I've been recording over the past year and sort of settling in, and it's still kind of been the pandemic, so I haven't felt rushed to do that. So I've been focusing more in Nashville on my side person thing and trying to play with other people. And now that my album's about to come out pretty soon, I'm ready to be playing out again. And I had a really fun gig there in June that I had some people sit in on, but it wasn't like a full set of my
Mm.
music with a band. So I'm very excited for August. But as I said, going back to your money question, like, it is very expensive to be a front person with a full band. And so I'm sort of taking that part of my journey step by step and just trusting that the little stepping stones will appear in front of me. And, I
Yeah.
don't need to be doing shows all the time with a full band. But, hopefully there comes a time when I can take a full band on the road and have that be sustainable.
Yeah. We've talked previously on different podcasts about how in the South, especially, that there's a lot of tipping that goes around. Like, people pass a bucket, and
Yes.
we were confused as to why that is. But now that you're saying this, it makes a lot more sense of why there's a need to do tipping
Uh-huh.
instead of just because up here there's like a tip jar, but no one goes around with their hat and says, "Hey."
Yeah,
And
that's very true.
that doesn't happen around here. People
Very
just
true.
play their set. Maybe people buy them a few drinks and then they leave.
Yep. Might be why.
Might be why. Might be why.
And hey, I still haven't dove in completely into the venue scene in Nashville. I'm sure there are a few great ones
Oh, yeah.
who pay well, and obviously there's a big like ticketing culture, and it's like, well, if you can draw a crowd and sell the ticket sales, then you'll make a lot of money. But that is, of course, difficult as an artist starting out that doesn't yet have a big following in a place, especially in a place like Nashville. There's just so much competition.
Oversaturation,
It's
yeah.
oversaturated. So exactly, it's like
You know,
sometimes doesn't feel necessary to even play there.
yeah, it's almost like you have to make it big elsewhere to be able to come in elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah. But the reason I love being there is my community that's there, and I just feel really supported by all the other musician friends that I have there, and it seems like the right place to be for that reason. My music isn't necessarily very Nashville by any means, but the music that I like to play with my friends for fun is. There's a lot of pickers there, and we'll get together and we'll have parties and we'll just play music and sing songs, and that's what we do. And um, you know, I think I'll probably live somewhere else at some point. We'll see where
Very
I
good.
go next. But
Let's talk more about the friends. You said you had a lot of female friends down there.
yes,
And how important that was.
oh my gosh, I have just this amazing. I feel very lucky to be surrounded by some amazing ladies who are also pursuing music, and I really want to try to like rattle them all off. I don't want to miss anyone, but there's like some of my older friends that I really knew before Nashville from the music camp, Liv Green, who I've played in her band on fiddle and mandolin before. She writes amazing music. Joby Riccio, who is like the next up and coming country singer. She's so good. She has a new album that's going to come out soon. There's Libby Whitenauer in Dallas Ugly.
Yeah.
And she also has music that she's released on her own that's really incredible. And she's also a side person. And there's Christine Wilhoit, who plays banjo and has a band back in California. And she's starting to like side person on electric guitar. And we're all just like exploring these ways that we can support each other and become better musicians. And Elise Levy, who's like the next like Joni Mitchell, like really gotta look up all these people. They're so incredible. And they're also down to earth. You know, I was scared that I was going to move to Nashville and feel like it was this really competitive place, but it's such a like familial community. People just really take care of each other. It's not like a race or a competition. Everyone just wants to like be there for each other and lift each other's music up. There's Sadie Gustafson Zook, who is a really incredible songwriter who also has some jazzy stuff going on. Like her voice is crazy. She's so good. Oh, I feel so bad. I'm gonna be missing people. There's a lot of amazing pals down there, and I just it's especially cool to have a community of women that for me that we all are doing the same thing. We're all like trying to be musicians, and to have that sort of camaraderie feels really special. And there was some of that in Boston, but it was more like people are in school here. But to be somewhere now where we're all adults
and actually trying to do it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot Sammy Brayman, like one of my all-time favorite fiddle players. She's in this band, The Onlys, this old-time band. They're just the grooviest band you'll ever hear. She's like so passionate about the fiddle and so amazing. I told you I'd miss people. It's tragic. There's so many cool people there. It's like I can't even rattle them all off right now.
And it's always the funniest things where like you're in the moment, you're like, oh, I've forgotten every single person I've ever known ever.
That literally even happens when I'm like gonna have a get together down there and I go to make a group chat, and I feel like the community is so fruitful that I'm always like, oh no, am I gonna forget to invite someone to this hang? And it's always growing too. There's always people who move in, and you're like, you're amazing. Please come hang out with us, play music with us, come to these jams. And it's always growing. So I'm always like, oh, I'm gonna forget someone. And it's a good problem to have, that there's so many amazing people down there.
If you want to check out another awesome female artist, and it's Kristen Brewer. I don't know if you ever heard of her.
I don't think so.
But she writes the music for Sight and Sound theaters.
Wow.
She's like one of those.
That's a cool gig.
Yeah, that's a cool gig. And she has this singing collective where it's all women, and it's all about women from the Bible specifically. So it's just this ultimate push of like women stuff.
Yeah.
And it's so good.
I gotta look her up.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm gonna be having her on soon. Unfortunately, I was supposed to have her on this past Friday, but unfortunately she came down with sickness.
Yeah. Oh man.
Happens.
Totally.
Totally. But
Totally.
I'm going to be having her on in the future, so I'm
Yeah.
super excited to figure out all of her inspirations.
Yeah. I mean, there's also a bunch of awesome dudes down there that I love who are just incredible musicians. I can't think of as many of them that are like leading bands.
Mm.
A lot of my friends down there are like they're like side people mostly, and supporting other people's acts. So
And there's just a ton of people.
there's a ton of people.
There's 1,000,005 bands everywhere,
Yeah.
especially in Nashville. When you can walk 5 steps on Broadway and be in a completely different music scene.
I know. Broadway is a mess. Broadway's crazy.
It was. We chose 2 days. All right, so we decided to do the Pantheon because you have to.
Yeah.
Right. And then I decided to do the African American Music Museum. Have you ever
Mhm.
been to that one yet?
I have not been to any museums yet in Nashville. You know when you live somewhere and so you like don't do those types of things because you live there?
I definitely recommend the African American Music
Is on my list.
Museum. I think that's what it's called. But it's one of the most modern. I think it's the newest museum.
Okay.
It was like built in like recently. But you can make your own music, like your own like blues, jazz, or whatever music in there, and you can keep it with you.
No way.
Yeah.
How
So
cool is that?
so that was just an amazing experience.
Wow.
Not only to get to learn the history of I didn't know the banjo was from Africa.
Yep.
I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I thought it was like from Appalachia. Because
Yeah.
that's the most common place
Totally.
to hear it.
Totally. Oh, so many instruments and musical traditions come from Africa and other
yeah.
places and just don't get the recognition they deserve always.
Right. So that was definitely awesome. But we spent one day just to travel the city or walk in the city, and I was like, "There's so many music everywhere. I can't focus. I don't know where to go."
It's
It's
a
very
lot.
overwhelming.
It's
Very
a lot.
overwhelming.
I gotta say, I don't go downtown that much. Like, yeah.
Yeah, next time I'm gonna be sure to reach out to all these people that I'm meeting and be
Yeah.
like, where should I go?
Oh yeah.
Where's the best place to eat? Because that's something we were trying to figure out. Because granted, we should have prepacked food. We should have. However, but thank God for Wendy's.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Everywhere.
I mean, they've got more than Wendy's down there.
They do, but I don't know about them. That's the problem.
Did they have barbecue at Wendy's?
That's so all we pretty much did was got a $5 biggie bag
Nice.
because we were on a budget.
Nice.
We just wanted to eat so we can have something to eat
Yep.
and then go everywhere
I hear
else.
I hear you.
But I'd love to check out because they have some really cool venues down there.
They do.
And I know that Nashville has really good food.
Uh-huh.
I just don't know where it's at. And I
Well,
didn't know
I
the people.
love food like almost as much as I love music. Maybe the same amount. So I'm happy to give you recommendations.
Awesome. So we also talked about the posting and advertising and all of that music stuff that artists have to do. Talk to me about the process for you because you're just starting to get into that.
Yeah, so I did a bit of that before the pandemic when I did a small Kickstarter for my EP and would post about shows and things like that. And pre-pandemic, I also was more like posting about my life and putting up Instagram stories of like what I'm doing with my friends. But I've always felt like really kind of weird about social media. I didn't grow up in a very like technological realm. Like we didn't really have phones until I was like in senior year of high school. I finally got a phone. My parents very much wanted to like keep us distanced from that kind of stuff. So when the pandemic hit, I realized I was like struggling with social media and just seeing everything on Instagram. It was such an isolating time, and to be, I don't know, just getting stuck in that loop of scrolling. It was really not healthy for me.
It's toxic almost.
And it was very much affecting my mental health. So I actually deleted, well, I guess it still existed, but I undownloaded it from my phone and I didn't use it for like a whole year. I I used Facebook a little bit. Instagram for me is the one that's a little more toxic. But that whole time that I was off it, I would have conversations with friends who are musicians and be like, you guys, like, do you think it's necessary? Am I going to have to get back on there? Like, the self-promotion feels so, like, icky
Classic.
sometimes. Like, and I see the ways some people self-promote, and I'm like, do I have to promote myself in that way? You know, just the way people will present themselves. And I'm like, more power to you, however you want to present yourself. But I was feeling, a lot of stress comparing myself to certain images people would put out for themselves and being like, do I want to do that? Do I have to do that? Is being a musician these days, is it separable from like being a public figure that has to like get good photos taken and be active and be like growing your followers? And I was like, I'm not interested in that. Like, I love music. I don't love advertising. Some people do and they're great at it. But I spent a lot of time like thinking through that. And one of the things I like that really bothered me was some presences in social media that I felt like I was like, I never want to be that person who posts something of me feeling good about myself, but it for some reason makes someone else feel bad about themselves, And I was so scared of being that person. But then I came to this place a few months ago where I was like, you know what? Me holding myself back because I want to try to protect other people from what they're going to think of me is not productive. And I need to just be the most authentic version of myself that I can. I will get on there and post when it's necessary. For example, I just did a pretty big Kickstarter for my first full-length album. Thank you, everyone who helped me finish that. And it is very necessary to get on there and remind people about that, because there were people after it's over who are like, oh, you were doing a Kickstarter? I didn't see that. And I'm like, what? I was posting every day. Like, the algorithms are crazy, so you really have to like put effort into that. So I sort of like swallowed this pill and was like, okay, at least for the Kickstarter, I do need to get on there and be present. But I would sort of make myself get on, post, and get off, right?
Right.
And so I'm kind of at the point now where that's over. I sort of disappeared after the Kickstarter and was like, all right, thanks, everybody. See ya. Like, see ya in real life. Now that it's summer and I've got like some gigs, I'm like, okay, I feel like it's a cool way to post a pic and be like, hey guys, I have this show if you're interested. I'd also like to get to a point where I'm like recording some things and putting up some videos, if people can actually go on and like see what I sound like. And I have some stuff like that, but I realize after like posting every day for the Kickstarter, like, whoa, I used to be like, why is everybody just posting pictures of themselves and not videos of what they sound like? Because like, what's the picture going to tell anyone,
Right.
But of course it's like your branding and people like to see your face, and it takes a lot of time to make videos. So sometimes you just want to put your post up and be done.
I agree.
So I'm at this point now, especially after stopping for like a year, that I think feels way more balanced and healthy. And I have this perspective on it now where I'm like, whoops, I'm scrolling. I'm going to stop. I'm closing this down. All I needed to do is post. And I'm not going to go on and look and see who liked it and like, I'll set myself a time and be on my to-do list. Like, tomorrow, go on, respond to the people who commented, right? Respond to your DMs, but don't be on there checking it constantly. So for me, structuring my time around it has been really helpful, and just making boundaries for myself.
Yes.
And just knowing that, if I put out my authentic self and in a way that feels real to me, then I don't think I'm going to be hurting anyone in that way. And you've probably heard those quotes that are like, dimming your light isn't going to help the world. Like, if we shine our lights, that's going to help everyone to shine brighter and
Yeah.
have more light. So I've been really working on that and building confidence around that to be like, okay, like I want to shine my light. I deserve to shine my light, and so does everyone. And there's a way to do it that's not alienating
Or
and
unhealthy.
unhealthy.
Yeah. That's something I've been trying to work out as well with the podcast. Like, how do you do it? Because I will oftentimes start with my ADHD brain. I want to know what everyone else is up to.
Yeah.
And the numbers, oh my gosh, the numbers. Can you get lost in the numbers? And it's funny every every time I go to my Facebook page, just like to manage something, I'll look at the numbers and be like, oh, it's down this percentage. What am I doing?
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny because I'm doing pretty well.
Totally.
Still.
Totally. Oh, I don't even pay attention to those anymore. At least right now. I'm like, oh, I lost a few followers. Like, whatever.
Whatever. Right. Yeah. Honestly, I don't care because it's not about, in the end, it's not about the numbers. It really isn't.
Absolutely
But
not.
it will suck you in. And
it is tough
it's
too when
viral.
there's like, a festival that will be like, well, they'll look at your following, right? And
Right.
so, as a musician, like sometimes it does feel like you need to have an online presence.
Yeah.
And so I'm at this point where I'm like, okay, I think now that I have an album coming out and I'm playing shows again, I'd like to be posting like maybe a few times a month just to keep my profile current. And for me, I think that's plenty.
Right.
And I'm not that kind of person who's going to go on and give you like inspiring reels every day. Like I do not have it in me and I never will. So it's just who I am,
Yeah, that's something I'm trying to figure out, like how to, because you're right, the following is a very much real thing. I haven't had it yet, but I know one day I'm gonna reach out to somebody and be like, oh, you only have 300 likes on like Facebook or whatever. What's the
Yeah.
point? And I'm like, well, it's not the point.
It's not the
It's
point.
not the point. It's not. Would I love to grow? Yes, I would love to. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. But the point is to coalesce experience for those people who are trying to do more.
Yep.
And people just love hearing other people's stories. You know what I mean?
Totally.
It's more about the community aspect than the, oh, you only have this much fun. I'm gonna get this much exposure. It's not the point.
Not the point.
Not the point.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, tell me, what is it like? In these, we're kind of rounding out our time here, but I'm curious about your album. What is the process behind that? How are you gonna I'm curious about how you set up the Kickstarter. How did you figure out the expenses?
Well, good question. So I've done a Kickstarter before, so I know the general budget, but a lot of these things I like have these people ready to hire and they give me their
rate.
And I'm like, okay, to mix an album, I mean, $3,000 is on the very low end. Like in Nashville,
Oh,
a
yeah, I
lot
guess
of
so, yeah.
people are mixing $500 to $800 a song. It's really crazy. So I haven't even decided who's going to be mixing it, but I gave myself the lower end of that budget, right? In the mastering process, I know who mastered my EP. I know how much it costed to do 6 songs, so I doubled that for 12, right?
12.
For PR and radio, I've done a lot of like asking friends, like, who did you work with? How much was it? And there's some PR firms that it's like $3,000 a month, 3-month minimum to work with us. And it's like, I can't do that right now. So I'm like, okay, if it's $9,000 to work with one of those PR firms, it's going to be at least $2,000 to $3,000 to work with someone else in Nashville, right? So I budgeted also on the low end, really, for a lot of these things. And a lot of the costs, I saved money for, like, my EP came out in 2017, and I've been putting aside money every month and year for years. And I spent, not going to talk numbers on here, but I spent a lot of money just recording the songs and did the Kickstarter to finish the overdubs, mix and master, and promote. But before that, like last summer, I paid for rehearsals, paying the musicians their studio rate. So every musician has a day rate that's at least, of course, in Nashville, several $100s a day. You've got your whole band. You've got a recording engineer. You've got the studio that you're renting. All of these things are at least hundreds of dollars a day, if not more, right? So I was able to cover those costs up front, which felt really good. But still, it's like I did a $15,000 Kickstarter, right? So it's like crazy the amount of money and time and energy that goes into making a full album. It's really bonkers. And
I'm sure.
I used to be like, I'm going to be an independent artist forever. I'm against labels. At this point, I know some friends who are starting to work with labels. I'm hearing of the pros and cons. And I'm at a point in my career where I'm like, well, I want to explore different types of management, different types of labels, and see what's out there, because like how am I going to keep making records if I don't have some help? And hopefully my goal is like, with this record, my main goal is make something that I am so proud of, that sounds so good, that I can really put a lot of money into the PR and the radio and get it out there to as many people as I can. I want to like expand my listeners and my following through this album, and sort of, gain people being like, oh, she is doing this thing. She's put out an EP and now she's put out a full album. Like she's
committed.
She's committed to this career, right? So it's sort of like a step-by-step thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it comes to the costs, like I'm lucky enough to have a lot of friends who've recorded in Nashville and who I can sit down with and be like, so like, is this a good price for studio rental? And they'll be like, I'd look for something else. That's really steep, right? And then you look around, then you find a friend who'll rent out to you for less. And for overdubs, my boyfriend is a sound engineer.
Oh.
So I actually worked with this woman, Shani Gandhi, for recording the full band, because that was a very complicated process of recording live a full band with bass, drums, piano, guitar. And she's like best of the best. And I did invest a lot in working with her because it was like my dream.
Right.
She's like a Grammy-winning engineer.
Oh, wow.
So that was really amazing. And now for this stage of the process, for the overdubs, my boyfriend is really amazing at setting up microphones, getting good sounds, working on his computer setup to, all go through and be like, I want to comp this, and this. And when I say comp, I mean where you go through and you decide, you're editing the songs together and you're like, this was a good chorus and I'm going to put this verse here. And so he'll help me with those engineering edited things. So I know what his rate is. I'm paying him to help me with all those things. I've budgeted like, okay, I have 12 songs. I still need to pay a horn arranger for these 3 songs. I need to pay someone to come in and play pedal steel on this song, right? I have these visions for what the songs need. Obviously, I can't play all the instruments that need to be played. And so you have people come in, and it's cool though when I look at the budget of this record and I realize like all this money, pretty much all of it, except for what's going to like the PR and creating the CDs, that kind of thing. All of it's going to these real people who have careers in music. Like the amount of money that's been spent has been like, this engineer is getting paid this amount. These studio musicians are getting paid this amount for coming and playing. My boyfriend is getting paid this amount for doing overdubs. And it feels really cool to be like, wow, I had to ask my community for support to help pre-order stuff to be able to pay everyone out for the remainder of this experience. But like, I've created these jobs for people, and I'm like, oh, I'm the boss. And I'm like, this seems like a lot of money to me, but anyone starting any other kind of business would like
Same
laugh at
thing, yeah.
laugh at $15,000, you know, and I'm
Right.
like, that's so much money. But
Well, I'll promote your album for free. What is it?
it's called What You Feel Is Real, and it does not have a release date yet. I'm still finishing the overdubs, which I plan to be done with at the end of the summer, and then we'll be in the process this fall of mixing, mastering, making the merch, getting everyone their rewards ready to send out in January, and then so it'll have like a winter or early spring release in 2023.
What's the focus? What's the album based off of? Is there a storyline? Is it a concept album?
So, What You Feel Is Real is the name of one of the songs, and what I realized when I decided to call it that was that all of these songs are like very, very much centered around like mental health, self-reflection, self-love, like those kinds of journeys. And it like especially this song What You Feel Is Real. So I feel like that's the one that I was like, oh, when I call it this, it's going to pull this all together and people are going to realize what they should be listening for. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of different sounds on the albums. Like, honestly, I recorded 12 songs and I might not put all of them on the record. I need to decide. I want to make sure it is really cohesive and it does make sense, everything together. But it really was just like all these new songs that I'd written in the past couple years and my favorites and the ones that I felt like needed to be put out there. So.
Well, be sure to be on the watch out for that one. We have some general questions that I want to get to now. So what is some of the maybe biggest mistakes that maybe you've made or you've seen other people make in regards to like on the show date, with venues or with whatever, and how can you give advice to not make those mistakes?
Ooh, okay, you're talking about shows generally?
Shows generally, yeah.
Okay. Shows, not like recording.
Oh, well, either.
Okay. Let me think for a second. So recently I've realized with shows, I like to give myself so much time. I used to, like actually, I played my first full band show since the pandemic back in October at the October Roots and Blues. And I just forgot how much time it takes to like, you're at rehearsal with your band and you're like, oh, we need to eat. And then we're going to go, our sound checks at 7:30 and the show's at 8:30. So you're like, all right, we'll get there, go get some food at 7, we'll go load in. Well, we were just scrambling because you pull up your car, you put your blinkers on, you're loading in all your stuff. Maybe your drummer has the whole drum set if there's not a back line. You've got your keyboard and your lines and all this stuff. And then you're like, oh my God, I have to park now. And so I'm like, okay, everybody keep setting up. I'll be back. I run, I like park the car and I'm like, oh my God, we're supposed to be like sound checking and I still need to like change and make sure I just don't look like a crazy person who's like really sweaty right now. So then you go like, make sure you're presentable, put on what you're going to wear, whatever. And yeah, like not having enough time before a show is the worst.
It is.
So just in general in life, I've been trying to give myself more time for everything and trying to have like more rituals around things, like being like, okay, like this is the first time I actually gave myself like a little gig bag that I packed in my backpack so that on Friday when we came for our show at Southern Market, we like flew into Harrisburg, drove to my parents' house, loaded the car for all the gear, and it's only like 5 p.m. at this point and our show's at 8, but I'm like, all right, we're going into town right now. We need to get this stuff set up. And I had my little gig bag and it had like my change of clothes, my little rose water that I like to spritz on my face, my curling iron because I've been enjoying like sort of like doing this certain like ponytail when I play and curling my hair. And I realized that night I was like, this is cool. I feel like I have a ritual down now when I perform that's sort of like I transform from myself in the real world to myself as a performer, and it it feels good and intentional to like have that little metamorphosis happen before a show, and it
Yeah.
feels good to have time for that and time for me to actually warm up my voice, which I used to not do, and is really important for me because I've had a lot of vocal issues, and have time to like set up, sound check, and then take a breather. Like it's horrible to be like sound checking,
Go,
being
go,
like,
go,
we
go,
gotta
go.
go, okay,
Yep.
and then the crowd can't even tell that like, oh, were they just sound checking or had they already started? You know what I mean? So, yes, give yourself time. And like I love having a little ritual that makes me feel like I am transforming into this performer for the night, and so that I can help to like give this experience to people.
That's something I've always been a stickler for myself on. I always give myself at least 30 minutes or an hour of extra time because it is so valuable and it can be lost by the stupidest and silliest of things.
Like parking.
Like parking. Like you think this is a joke, but it's not.
It's not. It's so important.
It's so important to give yourself that extra time, and it allows you to have that free time to be like, okay, I'm gonna go out and there's people there and I gotta turn it on.
Yep. Yep. Because yeah, I feel like I've been also sort of like reflecting a lot on what's my intention as a performer, and like why do I want to get up in front of people and play music? And I feel like a big part of it for me is like I want to create an energy and a space for people that sort of takes them to another place. And like if I'm distracted and was late and didn't get to like transform into my performer self, like it's gonna show,
Yeah.
it's gonna take away from the audience's experience.
Yeah, definitely getting in your right mindset
Yeah.
helps. What is besides that, what is one thing that you wish that you know now that you wish you had known when you first started?
Just music in general.
Just music in general, recording, the business side, anything.
Okay, let me think carefully here. So one thing that I feel like I'm relearning as I make my album, like when I was 19 and made my EP, you know how when you're young, you just have this like unstoppable confidence?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the older you get, you just start feeling like an imposter more and more for some reason, even though you've been doing what you're
Right.
doing longer and longer. So I produced that album and was so proud of it. And then when I started this process to make this album, I just had a lot of hiccups and like false starts and restarts, just sort of doubting that I knew how to do it. And then it's taken a while for me to like get back to this place of like, oh my gosh, I know what I want. I know how I want this to sound. I like what's the issue here? Like where did the confidence go? It was a really really big journey on this album of me sort of like reclaiming my role as a producer and realizing like I know what I want and I know how I want my music to sound, and I have a vision that's as worthy as anyone else's. And everyone, I just feel like people need to know like their creative visions are super valuable and so unique and the only version of that the world has, right? And like I was a little intimidated by making a record in Nashville, and at first felt this pressure to like thinking I needed to like bring in all these other people to like defer to and like help me do it. And then I realized like, whoa, I really know what I want, and I'm just scared,
Right. Yeah.
I just need to give myself this opportunity to grow. So it's been a huge growing experience, and I've been learning like, there are things that I'm like, ooh, yeah, like I have finale now. Like, I know how to write music. I know what I want the horns to do. I'm going to write the horn parts. And then I'm like, actually, okay, I'm getting exhausted. I am doing everything for this album. Maybe I'm going to hire someone to do that, right? Like, so it's like then you can pick and choose and be like, okay, I actually do really need help on this thing, and you can hire it out. But I would say, like, learning to trust myself again has been really so valuable, and I never want to forget that. And I just want people to trust in that in themselves, you know?
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. 2 more questions. What is one thing you didn't expect going into the music industry?
One thing I didn't expect. Well, I feel like I'm sort of surprising myself that I want to be a side person. Like, and it's cool to see, like, how many of my friends in Nashville, like, their whole careers are being side people and supporting other people's music. I guess I maybe didn't expect my career in music to be so, like, have so many pieces and moving parts, but also, like I said earlier, I've always loved so many things. So I feel like it's perfect for me to be like, oh, I'm going to teach a little. I'm going to, in the afternoon, I'm going to like transcribe these songs. Then I'm going to go to rehearsal and learn these people's songs. And the next day I'm going to like record my songs. And there's like a lot of different things that go into it that, when I sort of blindly decided to start like freelancing after college, I don't think I really realized that I was like, I'm making a career in music. I was kind of like, I need to pay the bills, and teaching lessons and playing gigs is what I've always done. And now I'm like, oh, well, I love doing that stuff. And it's cool to see. I guess the biggest thing that surprises me about the music industry is how much there is to do in it. Like, it's not just writing songs and singing. Like, it's like everything under the sun. And it takes a village, just like making a movie. Like, the amount of people that go into making a record or having a band that tours around. Like, there's the management and the business and the advertisement and it's just crazy how much goes into it.
Yeah, the phrase "it takes a village to raise a child." It takes a village to make a music record.
Absolutely.
Sure. So last question: what is one of the funniest or maybe worst things that ever happened on a show?
Oh, huh. Wow. Maybe I've like blocked some things out of my memory because I don't have anything that's like coming up right away.
Any of your stands just fall apart and your piano just drips, or
I mean,
strap fall out?
all the time I'm like accidentally like hitting my guitar on things or like hitting myself on the microphone, stuff like that. I do those things a lot. I try to keep a very like casual relationship with the audience where I'm like, they know I'm a human. Like, I'm not trying to be something I'm not up here. I feel like I've had a lot of those silly moments. Anything like crazy? Knock on wood. I don't think yet. That's a good question. I wish I had a better answer.
No, I mean it's fine. I've known people who have literally slipped and gone.
That's amazing. I mean, I forget lyrics sometimes. Like,
what do you do when you forget lyrics?
Well, on Friday night at Southern Market, I had this 3-hour gig, and that's a long time to be singing.
It's a long time. Straight, right? Because there's no breaks.
We took a little break in the middle, but I put a bunch of songs on the set that I hadn't sung for like a long time, and I didn't have time to practice them. And I just went up there thinking that I was just going to magically remember all these words. And there were like several songs that I would get to a part and just be like, oh, forget the words here. It's been a while. Like, and then people would like clap, and then I remember them, and I think that's fine. I mean, if I was playing some like really special, like big amphitheater show or something, I would feel really embarrassed if I forgot the words, but I'd probably handle it the same way, just be casual.
Solo over it.
Solo over it. Yeah, I'm bad at hiding it though. I think too honest. I'm just like, hey everybody, just so you know, I just forgot the words, and I'm like, I didn't have to say that.
You have to let everyone know, because that's the thing in music. People won't know you make a mistake
Totally.
unless you acknowledge it.
Totally. Sometimes I will just like motion to Micah and be like, take another solo, and then I'm like trying to remember, and I'm like, I have one verse to remember. Like he's gonna play over one verse, and I'm just like, still not there.
Sing another chorus.
And then we'll just jam it out to the
Yeah.
end. I'm sure people don't always know. But
No, because in the moment, people are just jamming to the music, and most of them are probably a little bit inebriated.
yep, sometimes. And lyrics are hard for me to remember. Sometimes
Yeah.
I will like bring up some extra sheets and put them on the ground sometimes to like peer at. Luckily, I have very good vision, so I can like see tiny writing on the
good.
ground. And
Let's see. Key superpowers.
Yeah.
Vision. Well, with all that said, this has been Nina Vitry. You can find her on Facebook, Nina Vitry Music. You can find her on Instagram at nina.dv. I just realized it stands for Vitry.
yeah, when I was in like 11th grade and I made an Instagram, I was all like, I'm not going to put my real name on here because I don't want the internet to like track me. I mean, now you see where we are. We're all being tracked all the time. I'm just cracking up that I thought that like
You could
putting my
escape it.
name at DV would be like incognito. So that's why it's that. But
And you can find her on Spotify. Make sure to watch out for that album drop sometime coming maybe this year, next year.
2023.
2023.
Yeah.
With all of that said, I hope you have a wonderful day. Please do check out my stuff. You can follow me on The Story, Corey Rosen. That's CORY, no E, ROSEN, at Facebook on all streaming platforms. You can find me there. You can find, I think I have some stuff on Spotify if you want to, like, Corey Rosen. Check that out.
Cool.
I think so. Doing the solo artist thing too, don't know what I'm doing, right? So having to create copyright, getting like the ASCAP or whatever it is,
Yeah.
putting myself as a publisher, it's like, oh, this is stuff that's beyond my comprehension.
Right. And then it turns out it's actually beyond everyone's comprehension. Everyone's just
nobody
like
knows what to do.
doing their best, like walking in the dark.
And that's part of the goal of the podcast, trying to figure out what did other people do, so that way I can maybe try that and see if that works for me.
Totally. That's smart. That's really smart.
With all that said, please check out tomorrow. We're gonna have the Kaleidoscope. It's a local studio group around here that has done some awesome work for some of my previous guests. So please do check out that. If you want to support us, please do like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. If you're really feeling generous, please check out the merchandise. We have stickers and we have hoodies with the first 50 guests on the back. With all that said, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.